pushed and pulled and grabbed at me, and I glanced at my mom, who had accompanied me helplessly. Back in our hired car, we crawled through traffic as some students followed in cars, rolling down their windows and snapping photos. At the hotel, my mom and I collapsed onto our beds. The next day, I returned to the reality of my life in the United States. No one gave me a second glance at Miami International Airport. I wasn't sure whether all of it had been a dream. When I thought about my lineage, where my parents came from, and their parents before them, the last few days in Bolivia seemed even more improbable, if not impossible. It wasn't until a number of years after I was born that my parents received their American citizenship. Although this book, including the stories of my family life, is written in English, my parents have only ever spoken to me in Spanish. When my parents immigrated to America, they learned just enough English to hold a basic conversation. To this day, they sometimes struggle to communicate effectively. I still don't know half the sayings that are common to people who grew up speaking English, because I never heard them at home. There are certain words, like sequester, that I only knew how to say in Spanish until recently. And when I stub my toe, the curses come out in Spanish. My mother, Maria Cristina Galvez, was meant to be born in Arequipa, a region of Peru that is mostly dry and mountainous. But my grandmother wanted to have the support of her mother and family when she gave birth, so she flew to Lima, the capital, to be with family. My mother's father was a general in the Peruvian army, and during that time, a war was raging. As a little girl, my mom and her 4 brothers would often hear bombs from their bedroom windows. And sometimes, my mom had to hide under tables and study by candlelight because the electrical towers had been hit. In spite of the war, my mother remembers her childhood as loving, sheltered, and secure. My father grew up in a different world. He was born in La Paz, the capital of Bolivia, to a Jewish family. His parents moved the family to Lima when he was 3 years old. Later, they separated. His older brother died when he was 21, a tragedy that rocked the family and set the tone for his future life. Having fled Europe during World War II, my dad's grandparents, both Jewish, had big dreams for their grandson, sending him to Israel to study systems and applied mathematics. But my father rebelled against the discipline demanded by the program. His grandparents threatened to stop supporting him financially if he dropped out, but he did anyway, moving to Los Angeles to pursue a career in video editing. He lived in an apartment with several roommates and studied at a trade school. A few years later, he moved to Miami and landed a job at Telemundo's headquarters, doing production work. My father's father had rarely been a presence in his life, and his mother, still living in Peru, suffered from depression. So my father, cut off financially by his grandparents, was on his own, living paycheck to paycheck on a temporary work visa. Miami was a hub for Latinos visiting the United States, and my mother traveled there when she was 20 with a group of girlfriends. At a party, my father spotted her from across the room, and that was the beginning of our family. My mom returned to Peru and dated my father long distance for the next 3 years. She dreamed of being a professional psychologist, but her mother suggested that she get a career or degree in something less demanding. My mom was in love with my dad, so she listened to my grandmother's advice and got herself a secretarial certificate. But my grandmother did not simply allow my 23-year-old mother to move in with my father. She let my mother know that in order to do so and leave her parents' home in Peru, she had to get married. So my mom and my dad got married. They certainly would have preferred to live together a few years first, but they didn't have a choice. My parents had a wedding ceremony and settled in Miami. 3 years later, on August 24, 1996, I was born. My sister, Mariana, arrived a year after that. Spanish wasn't the predominant language just in